Alright, A4-H2O, let's do a build in this one. This will be a detailed guide. I will try my best to show you the build process in more detail here. And yeah, this is an absolutely fantastic, fabulous case. It's a bit more difficult to build in, but it's really not terrible. And there's just more of a process to making sure things fit together. Let's get started. We'll get started by popping off the panels for this one. Go ahead and take off everything, including the bottom panel, which unscrews. And once we do that, we can start by identifying our I/O cables. This first one here is the HD audio cable. Next one is the USB-A header, and then you have a singular power switch cable, and then lastly the USB-C front header cable. We'll take off the power supply shroud by removing the 4 screws. And then we can remove the top radiator tray. Pay attention to how the power supply cable runs, as you do want it to run from the plug to the power supply in this fashion. Then we can pop in our I/O shield for our motherboard. Because the motherboard is not inverted for this case, we can just run it right side up and just make sure that it does click into place and it's secure. We'll work our rad into place first because it's such a compact build. So for this demo, I'm using the PL240 from Cooler Master. And I've got upgraded fans to the Chromax NFA 12x25s. I'd recommend just some flat head 632 rad screws, but if you want to use the ones that come with the unit, you'll just have to remove 2 of the screws so that they can clear the center divider for the rad section, which is fine since the fans are supported anyway. Go ahead and connect the splitter cable up to the fans and then just route everything back in this orientation and organize the cable a little bit. And then we can return to the rad tray to the top and then secure the rad. I'm actually not going to tighten the tray down just yet in case we need to move the rad around or we need some play here to reach back in. And we can pop the motherboard in. This is the ASUS B550-itx. I've popped the CPU in already, and I've already connected the fan cable to the CPU fan header. And we'll just connect the power button cable first. Then I've connected the USB-C cable right under it. The front panel audio cable is in not such a nice place for this board. You can of course take off that little cover and slot it in a little bit easier, but I'm just gonna be lazy and try my luck. Look at the pins and you'll be able to figure out how it's oriented, because there's gonna be a missing pin, and that's how you know how to push it on. We can then screw on the motherboard. These are M3 standoffs, just do all 4. This riser cable is what connects the graphics card to the motherboard, and here we have a PCIe Gen 4 version, and that is actually what I'd recommend if your board and your CPU are PCIe Gen 4 compatible. Just go ahead and slot that in and give it a nice push to make sure it's secure and engaged all the way. Before we attach the pump, let's just go ahead and attach our PSU cables. These are modular cables, so we can do it this way. We'll start with the 24-pin ATX, and then we'll do the EPS cable. This one's in the top left of the board. Just make sure the latches face away from the motherboard, just like for the 24-pin ATX cable. And we'll just route this one along the top of the board. Now we can take the pump head. These Cooler Master ones often use the stock AM4 hardware, and that is the case here. It's good and bad, but as long as you tighten it down properly, it's fine. We'll just hook the latches over the plastic motherboard brackets and tighten them down progressively or at the same time. And the pump head for this guy comes with 2 attached cables. One is to power the pump, we'll hook that up to the AIO pump header that's on the motherboard, and here it's at the top. It's in the middle of the 3 headers on the board. The other is the 3-pin RGB cable. It's not a great angle here, I apologize, but it's just right next to the fan headers and you can't miss it. There's only one with 3 pins, so go ahead and hook that up. We can pop in our RAM now. Just make sure you open up the slot and identify which side is the long side of the pins and the short side. Just line up the slot correctly and press down, click, click. Let's go ahead and switch gears now and let's do the other side. The GPU side here, remove 2 slots for our 2-slot card. And you'll note that I'm removing the 2 outer ones, and that's because I'm swapping out the installed standoffs in order to pop in extended ones. My review unit here didn't come with the extended standoffs, but as I understand the retail ones do, so just go ahead and pop those in. Screw them down tight with an adapter and then put that riser cable back on. You're going to want to do this step especially if you have a Ampere Founders Edition card. Well, at this point I've positioned the 2 PSU cables for the GPU, so we can just take the card and make sure the riser cable lock is open, line it up, and we can push it in place. Just make sure that it's firmly in. Go ahead and lock that riser cable down, and then we'll put 2 PCIe slot screws back in place. Connect the power cables back to the GPU, and we just need 2 here for this 3080XC3. To wrap up the build here, we'll go ahead and sort out our cables back to the PSU. Let's first route the cables near where the PSU will go. And then we can pop the shroud onto the PSU and just tighten down 4 screws. So one note is to orient the fan facing out, so like this. And that'll let the unit draw cool air in. Connect the AC power cable up and also make sure the rocker switch is in the on position. Otherwise it will be more difficult to do that later on. We can now just put the unit back in place. Make sure the tubes go around the AC power cable protrusion, and if your clearances are okay and things fit and look okay, go ahead and lock the rad tray down. Line the top back on and pop the top back in place. Screw the PSU shroud in and let's just plug the cables back into the power supply. Really any order is fine as long as it's convenient for you. Here I'm just going to do the PCIe cables first, then the EPS, then the 24-pin ATX cable. Your power supply will be labeled, so just connect it back accordingly, and yeah, you will end up with a bunch of cables, so just tuck them in however you like. We'll just do a quick check here and make sure our fans, they spin nicely. If there is some kind of obstruction, make sure you correct that before closing things up. Usually it's cables, so just check those. And you'll see here on this end why the standoff mod is helpful here, since it gives more clearance for the card. We can now pop the front panel back on as well. It only goes on one way, so just make sure the pin is aligned. Then the side panels, you really don't need the thumb screws with the case panels, but you can use those if you want. And yeah, with that you're all done. For the thermal testing and other information, feel free to check in on the initial review, which I'll leave linked up here for the case, as that was this test build here. Hope you had a successful build and it was fun. Hope that was also easy enough to follow. If I missed something, please feel free to let me know. I'm always looking to improve these tutorials, so every little bit of feedback helps, so let me know. Give a like, subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks for watching.